The bullet tore through William's shoulder like a bolt of lightning, cracking the humid Louisiana night, sending him tumbling backward into the black water of the bayou. As the current dragged him under, Gator's eyes glinted like embers in the dark, and he choked on the taste of silt and betrayal, whispering James's name like a prayer to a god who'd long since turned away. In that moment, floating face up toward oblivion, he saw it all unravel. The stolen kisses in the sugarcane fields, the family Bible stained with secrets, and the mud that would either bury him or birth his revenge. William's lungs burned as the bayou claimed him, the water a cold, possessive lover wrapping around his body like the arms he'd once craved. He kicked feebly, the wound in his shoulder pulsing with every heartbeat, but the pain was nothing compared to the ache in his chest. James. How could James have looked him in the eye that afternoon? His blue eyes soft as the Mississippi at dawn, and still pull the trigger. The boat's motor had roared away minutes ago, leaving only the croak of bullfrogs and the slap of cypress branches against the current to mourn him. He surfaced once, gasping, mud caking his lips like war paint. The stars above blurred through the canopy of Spanish moss, indifferent witnesses to his end. William Landry, 32 years old, heir to nothing but lies, left to rot in the swamp his daddy had dredged for oil money that never trickled down. He'd grown up on stories of the bayou, tales his mama spun on the porch swing in Thibodeau, her voice laced with bourbon and regret, about how the water held grudges deeper than any grave. Now it was pulling him into its embrace, and for a fleeting second, he almost welcomed it. But surrender wasn't in his blood. Not Landry blood, stubborn as the red clay that stained their boots. With a guttural cry that scattered herons into the night, William clawed at a low-hanging root, hauling his battered frame onto a mud bank overgrown with ferns. He lay there, chest heaving, the metallic tang of blood mixing with the earthy rot of the swamp. His phone was gone, sunk with the skiff James had shoved him from. No signal out here anyway, in this godforsaken arm of the Atchafalaya Basin where cell towers feared to tread. Dawn crept in slow, painting the sky the color of a fresh bruise. William tore his shirt into strips, binding the wound as best he could. It wasn't pretty. Hell, it was a butcher's job, but it stemmed the flow enough to let him think. James, that son of a bitch. They'd met 3 years back in New Orleans, at a dive bar on Decatur Street where the jazz wailed like lost souls and the absinthe flowed freer than tears. William had been nursing a hurricane, the storm in the glass mirroring the one in his gut after burying his mama. James Duval, with his easy grin and calloused hands from shrimping his daddy's boat, had slid onto the stool next to him and said, "You look like a man who's forgotten how to dance." From there it was a whirlwind. Stolen weekends in the quarter, bodies pressed close in the humid dark of preservation hall basements, whispers of forever exchanged over beignet at dawn. James was everything William's family wasn't: open, alive, unashamed. In a town where Landry men married shotgun style and prayed the devil skipped Sunday supper, loving another man was the original sin. But James made it feel like grace, until the secrets started bubbling up like gas from the marsh. William staggered to his feet, the world tilting like a drunk on Bourbon Street. He needed to get out, find a road, a phone, anything. The bayou stretched endless, a labyrinth of channels and hummocks, but he knew it like the scars on his knuckles. From boyhood hunts with his brother, Etienne, who'd vanished 10 years ago under whispers of scandal. Etienne, the golden boy, the one who dared to love wrong. William had always suspected the family had something to do with it, but Daddy's word was gospel, etched in the oil stains on the ledger books. Pushing through the underbrush, vines snagging his jeans like accusatory fingers, William pieced it together. Last night, after the family gathering at the old plantation house, Belle Reve, they called it, a crumbling monument to faded glory, James had cornered him in the library. "We gotta talk," he'd said, voice tight as a bowstring. William had thought it was the usual, pressure from his uncle, the senator, to marry some debutante from Baton Rouge, produce an heir to launder the Landry name. But no, James had laid it out cold. Etienne hadn't run off. He'd been helped along, pushed into the bayou just like this, because he'd fallen for a boy from the wrong side of the tracks. And now, with William following the same forbidden path, the family couldn't risk another stain. "You think you can just erase us?" William had snarled, shoving James against the oak-paneled wall. But James's eyes had hardened, and in his hand, the gleam of Daddy's old Colt. "It's not me, Will. It's them. And if you don't stop digging." The shot had come before the threat could land. Now, hours later, fever gnawing at his edges, William emerged onto a gravel levee road. The distant hum of a pickup truck his salvation. He flagged it down. A grizzled Cajun fisherman named Remy, who crossed himself at the sight of the blood-soaked ghost. "Mon Dieu, what chewed you up and spit you out?" Remy muttered, tossing him a thermos of chicory coffee as they rattled toward Lafayette. In the ER, under fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry hornets, William spun a half-truth about a hunting accident. The docs patched him up, pumped him with antibiotics, and by noon, he was on a Greyhound bound for New Orleans, the scar on his shoulder a fresh brand of resolve. He wouldn't go back to Belle Reve, not yet. First, answers. James owed him that much, a face-to-face, eye-to-eye, before the mud claimed them both. The bus lurched through the wetlands, egrets wheeling against the clouds like pale flags of truce. William stared out the window, the landscape a watercolor smear of green and gray. Memories flooded and unbidden. The first time James kissed him, under a live oak in City Park, rain pattering on the leaves like applause. "I ain't never felt this before," James had breathed, his shrimper's hands trembling as they cupped William's face. It had been tentative, then fierce, a dam breaking after years of drought. They'd laughed afterward, soaked to the skin, promising to outrun the ghosts of their upbringings. But ghosts don't run. They cling. William's phone, a burner bought at a gas station in Morgan City, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stay away. For your own good." He deleted it, jaw set. No, he'd crawl back from the dead if he had to, drag every buried truth into the light. The Landrys had built their empire on silence, on bodies sunk in the swamp. But William? He'd be the flood that washed it clean. By evening, he was back in the Crescent City, crashing at a Fleabag motel off Rampart Street. The room smelled of mildew and regret, but it had a lock and a view of the spires piercing the twilight. He showered, the hot water stinging his stitches, and for the first time since the shot, allowed himself to feel it all, the rage, the grief, the love that still twisted like a knife. "James, what had they done to you?" Sleep came fitful, haunted by dreams of Etienne's laugh echoing across the water, his brother's face superimposed on James's as the Bayou swallowed them whole. Morning brought clarity, sharp as the fleur-de-lis on the city seals. William hit the streets, starting with the Duval family dock in the Irish Channel. The shrimpers were hauling in the night's catch, nets heavy with silver flashes and the occasional stingray flop. He spotted old man Duval first, James's father, barking orders with a cigar clamped between yellowed teeth. "Mr. Duval," William called, stepping onto the weathered pier. The man turned, squinting, then recognition dawned like a storm cloud. "Landry, thought you were laid up after that mishap." The pause hung heavy, laced with implication. William forced a smile, thin as Bayou fog. "Takes more than a scratch to keep me down. Where's James?" Duval spat into the water, watching the glob ripple and vanish. "Out on the Gulf. Won't be back till tomorrow. And even then, boy, you best steer clear. Waters are choppy enough without stirring old pots." But William was already stirring. He spent the day tracing threads, old newspaper clippings from the library on Canal Street about Etienne's disappearance, whispers from barflies at the Maple Leaf about Landry payoffs to keep mouths shut. By nightfall, pieces clicked. Etienne had been in love with Remy, the same Remy who'd saved him, a fact the family deemed toxic to their political ambitions. Uncle Harlan, the senator from Baton Rouge, had orchestrated the accident, with Daddy turning a blind eye. And James? He'd been pulled into the web last year, promised a stake in the shrimping fleet if he kept watch on William, reported back. Betrayal tasted like the brackish water he'd swallowed. But beneath it, a deeper hurt bloomed. the realization that James's love, for all its fire, had been laced with poison from the start. The next dawn broke humid and heavy, the kind of New Orleans morning where the air clung like a second skin. William slipped into a faded Saint's cap and aviators, blending into the throng of tourists shuffling toward Café du Monde for their powdered sugar fixes. He nursed a black coffee at a corner table, eyes on the Duval boat chugging back into the harbor. James stepped off first, salt-crusted and sun-browned, hauling a cooler that sloshed with ice and shrimp. He looked weary, the lines around his eyes deeper than William remembered, like the bayou had etched its weariness into him too. William waited until the crew dispersed, then approached from the shadows of a rusted warehouse. "Miss me?" James froze, the cooler slipping from his grip to thud on the dock. His face cycled through shock, relief, guilt, emotions flashing faster than neon on Bourbon Street. "Will? Jesus, you're supposed to be dead," William finished, voice low and edged with gravel. He stepped closer, close enough to smell the sea on James's skin, the faint trace of diesel from the engine. "Yeah, well, the devil's got lousy aim. Or maybe you do." James's hand shot out, gripping William's arm. Not roughly, but desperate, like anchoring a line in a squall. "It wasn't like that, I swear. They made me, Harlan's men were there, watching. If I hadn't—" His voice cracked, eyes darting to the water as if it might rise up and claim them both. William wrenched free, the touch burning like his wound. "Save the sob story. I know about Etienne, about how your family's in bed with mine, covering up murders for votes and oil leases. You think I wouldn't find out?" The dock seemed to sway under them, or maybe it was just the world tilting again. James's shoulders slumped, defeat settling like dew on the pilings. "Etienne. Yeah. I didn't know then. Not till last year when Harlan got wind of us. He sat me down, showed me the ledgers, the payoffs, the photos, said if I didn't play along, the Duvals would end up like the LeBlancs, bankrupt and broken." William's laugh was bitter, echoing off the brackish waves. "And you believed him? After everything? We talked about running, James. New York? San Francisco? Anywhere but this swamp of lies." "I tried." James exploded, voice rising enough to turn heads from the bait shop. He lowered it, urgent. "But then you started asking questions about your brother. Digging into the old files at the courthouse. Harlan panicked. Said you were a loose end like Etienne. I thought, God, I thought pulling that trigger would scare you off, make you back down. Not." He trailed off, gesturing vaguely at William's bandaged shoulder beneath the loose Henley. The admission hung between them, heavier than the humid air. William wanted to hate him. God, he did. But the pull was still there, magnetic as the tide. James's eyes, those damn blue eyes, pleaded for understanding, for the absolution only William could grant. For a heartbeat he almost did, almost stepped into the circle of his arms, let the familiar strength chase away the chill. Instead, he turned away. "I need proof. Real proof, not Harlan's ghost stories. Meet me tonight at the old cemetery in the Garden District. Midnight. Come alone, or I walk into that senator's office tomorrow with what I know." James nodded, mute, as William melted back into the crowd. The day dragged after that, a blur of brass bands on street corners and the scent of gumbo simmering in iron pots. William holed up in a po' joint on Magazine Street, poring over photocopies from the library. Etienne's last sighting at a Face du Deux in St. Martinville, dancing with a dark-haired boy who matched Remy's description from decades past. Remy, the fisherman who'd saved him. Had he been Etienne's lover? The coincidence gnawed at William like a skeeter. By twilight, the city pulsed with life. Second-line parades snaking through the Faubourg Marigny, laughter spilling from wrought iron balconies. But William felt the undercurrent, the voodoo pulse of secrets that New Orleans guarded like a confessional. He wandered the streets, letting the rhythm seep into his bones, steeling himself for the confrontation ahead. Midnight found him at Lafayette Cemetery No. 1, the air thick with jasmine and the faint rot of above-ground tombs. Moonlight slanted through the oaks, casting bars of silver on the crumbling angels. James arrived on foot, hands shoved deep in his pockets, a manila envelope clutched under one arm. "You came," William said, emerging from behind a weathered obelisk. "Couldn't not." James handed over the envelope, fingers brushing William's in a spark that lingered. "Harlan's safe. Cracked it last week. Photos, ledgers, everything." William flipped it open under the glow of his phone light. Grainy black and whites. Etienne and Remy, young and defiant, arms slung around each other at a Bayou fish fry. A ledger entry, dated the night Etienne vanished. Disposal fee, $5,000. Paid to J.D. Duval, James's father. Bile rose in William's throat. "This is it," he whispered. "The end of them." James stepped closer, voice raw. "And us? What about us, Will? I messed up bad, I know. But I never stopped. Love." William cut in the word a weapon. "Love doesn't load the gun, James. It doesn't pull the trigger." The silence stretched, broken only by the distant wail of a saxophone from Frenchman Street. James reached out again, this time cupping William's jaw, thumb tracing the stubble. "Then let me make it right. We take this to the feds together. Blow it wide open. Start over, away from all this." William leaned into the touch despite himself, the warmth a balm on his frayed edges. For a moment, the cemetery faded, the tombs, the lies, and it was just them, two boys stealing time in a city that devoured dreams. Their lips met, tentative, then urgent, a kiss tasting of salt and redemption. James's hands fisted in William's shirt, pulling him closer, and William let go, just for a breath, believing in second chances. But belief is fragile as fog. As they broke apart, headlights pierced the gloom, sweeping the gates like accusatory fingers. "Get down," James hissed, yanking William behind a vault. A black SUV idled at the entrance, engine purring low. Harlan Landry stepped out, silver hair gleaming under the street lamp, flanked by two suits who screamed private security. "I know you're here, nephew," he called, voice smooth as bourbon over ice. James tipped us off. Family first, always. Betrayal, round two. William's heart plummeted, the envelope crumpling in his fist. James's face, inches away in the shadows, was a mask of horror. "Will, no, I didn't." But the doubt had rooted thorny and deep. William bolted, weaving through the crypts, Harlan's men crashing after like hounds on the scent. He vaulted a low wall, scraping palms bloody on oyster-shell stucco, and sprinted into the night, the envelope his only weapon. The streets of the Garden District blurred into a fever dream as William ran, magnolia blossoms exploding underfoot like pale grenades. His shoulder throbbed in time with his pulse, each step a reminder of the fragility of flesh and trust. Behind him, the SUV's tires screeched, headlights clawing at the darkness, but the neighborhood's labyrinthine alleys, twisting past shotgun houses and live oaks draped in resurrection fern, gave him the edge. He ducked into a courtyard, scaling a brick wall slick with dew, and dropped into the next block, breath ragged, chest aflame. Hiding in the lee of a carriage house, he listened as the vehicle prowled past, Harlan's voice barking orders into a radio. "Find him, and the Duval boy. Make sure he sings the right tune." William's mind reeled. James tipped them off? After the kiss, the promises? Or was it a ploy, a desperate bid to buy time? The man he'd loved had always been a riddle wrapped in a shrimper's net, layers of loyalty and longing knotted tight. Dawn found him holed up in a laundromat on St. Charles Avenue, the industrial hum of dryers masking his shallow breaths. He unfolded the envelope on a folding table, smoothing the creases with trembling hands. The photos stared back accusingly. Etienne, no older than 20, grinning with that reckless Landry charm, arm around Remy in a snapshot frozen mid-laugh. On the back, scrawled in faded ink, "To forever in the bluey blue," like James's eyes, like the gulf that had claimed so many secrets. A payphone on the wall caught his eye. He fished quarters from his pocket, remnants of the Greyhound fare, and dialed the only number he trusted. Aunt Celeste, his mama's sister, the family black sheep who'd fled to the bayou's edge after Daddy's rages grew too loud. The line crackled like Spanish moss in wind. Celeste Landry speakin'. Her voice was smoke and sweet tea, unchanged after 15 years. It's me, Aunt Cece. William. A pause, then a sharp intake. Lord have mercy, boy. Folks say you drowned like your brother. What's this foolishness? No time. I need a safe place. And answers. About Etienne. Another beat. Heavier. Get yourself to my cabin off Highway 182. Past the Parrot Sanctuary. Doors always open. But William. Some truths best left in the mud. She hung up before he could press. William slipped out, catching the streetcar rattling down the avenue, its bells a jaunty counterpoint to his dread. The ride through Uptown was a montage of privilege. Mansions with columns like teeth, joggers in Lululemon dodging potholes. But it felt hollow, a facade cracked by the scandals beneath. Celeste's cabin squatted on stilts amid the cypress knees, a shotgun shack weathered to driftwood gray. She met him on the porch, shotgun propped casual against the rail, her silver braids coiled like serpents. Look at you, she clucked, pulling him into a bone-crusher hug that smelled of sage and sorrow. Skin and bones, and that shoulder. Gimme a look. Inside, over mugs of file gumbo thick with okra and andouille, the story spilled. Celeste had been Etienne's confidant, the aunt who slipped him books on Whitman and Baldwin when Daddy preached fire and brimstone. Your brother loved fierce, William. Loved Remy like the sun loves the marsh, necessary, wild. But Harlan, he saw it as a cancer on the bloodline. Senatorial ambitions don't abide deviance, as he called it. William traced the rim of his bowl, steam curling like ghosts. They killed him. For that. Celeste's eyes, sharp as egret beaks, softened. Not outright. Pushed him into a skiff after a party. Doped his drink. Said it was an accident when the gators took hold. Remy pulled him out once, but Etienne. He couldn't fight the current forever. Washed up weeks later, they claimed suicide. Buried him quick. No questions. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling through William's core. Suicide. The family lie polished over a decade. And James? The Duvals were in on it. She nodded, grim. Old man Duval took the hush money. Figured it bought silence and a bigger boat. But James, he's torn child. Loves you but fears a hellhound. Sniffed him out young. William pushed back from the table, pacing the creaky boards. Love. That word again, slippery as mullet. He'd felt it in James's touch last night. Genuine as the jazz that wept from Preservation Hall. But fear? It turned men to monsters or cowards at best. A knock shattered the quiet. 3 raps. Deliberate. Celeste snatched the shotgun, but William waved her down. Through the screen door, James stood, hat in hand, face etched with the mileage of a sleepless night. Please, Will, let me explain. Celeste's gaze flicked between them. Then she sighed, retreating to the back room. Y'all got 10 minutes. Then guns come out for real. Alone, the air thickened. James crossed the threshold, envelope in hand. No, a new one, thicker. Harlan grabbed the first, but I had copies. And a recording. From last night after you ran. He bragged about Etienne, about how he'd do the same to us if we crossed him. He played it on his phone, Harlan's voice tinny but unmistakable. Boy like that, loose lips, love's wrong. Bayou takes care of its own. Just like your uncle's mess back in 15. William's blood iced. Proof irrefutable. Why? He demanded, voice breaking. Why tell him where we were? James sank onto a cane chair, head in hands. I didn't. Swear on Mama's grave. He must have tailed me from the docks. I went to your motel first, then the cemetery. Trying to find you before they did. William wanted to believe God. The ache for it was visceral. He crossed to James, kneeling, hands framing that familiar face. I'm tired of half-truths. If we're doing this, it's all in. No more shadows. James's eyes shimmered, tears carving tracks in the salt crust. All in. I promise. Their foreheads touched, breaths mingling. And in that fragile truce, William felt the spark reignite. Not just desire, but something deeper, a shared survival instinct. But peace was fleeting. Celeste burst back in, shotgun cocked. Company. Black SUV 2 miles out. Harlan's boys. They fled into the swamp behind the cabin, wading channels knee-deep in brackish soup. Remy waiting with his airboat in a hidden cove. The fisherman, Etienne's ghost made flesh, gripped William's hand brief but firm. For him, he murmured, firing up the engine. They roared into the maze of waterways, the bayou a reluctant ally, hiding them in its folds as the sun dipped low, gilding the water blood-red. That night, camped on a dry hummock under a billion stars, the 3 men shared a fire, spit-roasted nutria and tales of the lost. Remy spoke of Etienne's laugh, how it could coax crawfish from their burrows. James confessed his own buried pains, the taunts from schoolyard boys, the bottle his father passed him at 13 to toughen up. William listened, the flames dancing shadows on their faces, and for the first time, the weight lifted. Not gone but shared. Yet dawn brought drones buzzing overhead, Harlan's reach extending like kudzu. We go public, William decided, voice steady. New Orleans Picayune, then the feds in Baton Rouge. No more running. James nodded, hand finding Williams across the embers. Together. But as they motored toward civilization, a shadow loomed, Daddy's old fishing shack on the horizon, lights flickering like a lure. And in the gloaming, a figure waited. Uncle Harlan himself, shotgun leveled, smile cold as December mist. The airboat skimmed the glassy surface, propellers chopping the silence into froth. But William's heart hammered louder than the engine. Harlan stood on the shack's warped porch, a silhouette etched against the lantern glow, shotgun cradled like a Bible at a revival. The Bayou, that treacherous confidant, had delivered them straight into the serpent's mouth. Remy's navigation thrown by a sudden fog rolling in off the gulf, thick as grief. Cut the engine, William hissed. Remy complied, the craft gliding to a halt 20 yards out, cypress roots clawing the water like skeletal fingers. James tensed beside him, hand inching toward the pocket knife at his belt. But William laid a staying palm on his thigh. Bravado wouldn't buy them breath. Only words could, or the barrel's roar. William, my boy, Harlan called, voice carrying smooth over the murk, laced with that senatorial timbre that charmed donors and damned souls. Come ashore. Let's parley like civilized men. Family matters, after all. The word family landed like grapeshot. William rose slow, balancing on the flat-bottomed deck, the envelope of copies tucked in his waistband like contraband. Civilized? That's rich, uncle. Coming from the man who feeds his kin to the gators. A chuckle low and mirthless, poetic but wide of the mark. Etienne was troubled. Spirits, you know. The drink. We tried to help. Harlan stepped forward, boots thudding on the dock pilings, the shotgun dipping casual but lethal. Remy muttered a curse in Cajun French, fingers white on the tiller. James's breath hitched, his body a coiled spring beside William's. Don't go, he whispered. It's a trap. But William had danced this jig before. Landry pride demanded the stage. He leaped the gap to the dock, water sloshing cold over his cuffs, and advanced, hands open. Up close, Harlan looked diminished, jowls sagging under the lantern's harsh glare, eyes red-rimmed from too many nights chasing legacies. Help? William echoed, stopping an arm's length away. Like doping his gumbo and shoving him into the current? Like paying off the Duvals to zip it? Harlan's facade cracked, just a hair, the twitch of an eyelid, the swallow bobbing his Adam's apple. You don't understand the stakes, nephew. The Landrys built this state from mud and magnolias. Oil, shipping, politics, it's a house of cards. One queer scandal and it tumbles. Your daddy knew that. Sacrificed for it. Daddy? William spat, the name a wound reopened. He sacrificed us all. Mama drank herself dead over his silences. Tien, gone. And now me. The older man's gaze flickered to the airboat, where James and Remy watched, shadows in the fog. Ah yes, the shrimper. Fine for a tumble in the quarter, but marriage? Heirs? No. I did you a favor, boy. That bullet was mercy. A graze to wake you up. Mercy. William's laugh echoed hollow. James pulled it. On your orders. Harlan shrugged, unrepentant. Duval's loyal when the price is right. But he's soft on you. That's the problem. He raised the shotgun, deliberate, the barrel a black eye staring William down. Hand over the papers. We'll call it a family squabble. Chalked up to bad blood and better forgotten. William's mind raced. Jump back to the boat? Fight? The fog muffled everything. A cotton shroud. But in it, he heard James's voice from last night. Together. Stealing, he pulled the envelope free, holding it aloft. This? Or the recording? The one where you boast about taking care of loose ends. Harlan's face darkened. Thunderhead brewing. Bluff. Listen. William thumbed his phone. Harlan's own words spilling out tinny and damning. The shotgun wavered, just a fraction, and in that blink William lunged. Not at the gun, but the man, tackling him into the splintered rail. They grappled, a tangle of limbs and lies, the weapon skittering into the shallows with a plunk. From the airboat, shouts. James vaulting aboard the dock. Remy firing a warning shot that splintered porch wood. Harlan bucked beneath William, fist connecting with his jaw in a burst of stars. You ungrateful whelp. I'll bury you like your brother. The words fueled William's fury. He pinned Harlan's arms, knee in his gut, rain starting to patter like impatient fingers. Etienne deserved better. We all do. James hauled him off as sirens wailed distant, the fog parting like a curtain call. They bound Harlan with dock line, the senator sputtering curses as Remy motored them toward the highway, where Celeste waited with her old Ford pickup. The drive to Baton Rouge was a blur. Harlan trussed in the bed under a tarp, the envelope now joined by his phone, confiscated and sinking to William's cloud for backups. At the federal building, floodlit and imposing, agents swarmed like ants on cane syrup. Harlan was hauled away in cuffs, his empire crumbling in real time. Texts buzzing on seized devices, donors pulling funding, headlines brewing in the dawn light. William watched from the lobby, James's arm heavy around his shoulders, an anchor in the storm. You did it, James murmured, lips brushing William's temple. We did. But triumph tasted bittersweet. As the sun crested the Capitol dome, a call came. Daddy, from Bell Rev, voice quavering over the line. Son, what's this madness? Harlan. Arrested. William gripped the phone, the weight of generations pressing. Truth, Daddy. Long overdue. Silence, then a broken sob. I knew. About Etienne. God help me, I knew and did nothing. For the name. For you boys to have. Something. The admission cracked something in William. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. The Landrys weren't monsters born. They were made. Forged in the fires of fear and facade. Come clean, he said softly. All of it. Or the mud takes you too. Daddy agreed, voice small. By noon, the Picayune ran the scoop. Landry dynasty drowns in scandal. Senator charged in heir's suicide cover-up. The city erupted. Protests in Jackson Square. Talking heads on WWL-TV decrying the rot at the heart of Southern royalty. In the aftermath, William and James retreated to Celeste's cabin. The Bayou a balm rather than a curse. Days blurred into weeks of quiet healing. Fishing at dawn, where James taught William to cast for redfish, their hands brushing in the rod's flecks. Evenings on the porch, Celeste's fiddle weaving laments that eased the scars. One twilight, as lightning bugs sparked like fallen stars, James knelt by the water's edge, a simple silver band glinting in his palm, salvaged from an old Duval heirloom. Not legal here yet, he said, voice thick, but in my heart, forever. William pulled him up, kissing him slow, the world narrowing to the taste of salt and promise. Forever, he echoed, slipping the ring on. No fanfare, no crowds. Just them, and the swamp whispering approval. But peace, in Louisiana, is seasonal. A month later, A letter arrived at the cabin, postmarked Belle Rev. Daddy's will, revised in his final days. Cancer, the doctor said, eaten from the inside like the secrets. The plantation house, the oil rights, all to William. With a note, build better, son. For Etienne. For us. The inheritance landed like manna laced with arsenic. Heavy, unasked for. A crown of thorns disguised as keys. William stood on the warped veranda of Belle Rev, the Mississippi murmuring lazy beyond the levee, and felt the house's ghost stir. Spanish moss swayed in the breeze like nooses, and the air hummed with the ghosts of cotillions and cover-ups. James lingered at his elbow, hand light on the small of his back, a silent bulwark against the tide of memory. "You sure about this?" James asked, squinting at the sagging columns, paint peeling like old skin. "We could sell it. Start fresh in the quarter or hell, Austin. Anywhere the air don't choke you." William traced the brass knocker on the door. A lion's head, fierce and faded. "Running's what got us here. No, we reclaim it. Turn it into something good." Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust motes dancing in sun shafts through cracked stained glass. The library where James had pulled the trigger loomed first, bookshelves groaning under leather-bound tomes, the Persian rug still bearing faint outlines from that night's chaos. William paused, throat tight, but James squeezed his hand. "Past is prologue, Will. We write the rest." They spent days gutting the place, hauling out Daddy's ledgers stained with bourbon rings, Mama's porcelain dolls with eyes too knowing. Celeste came with her crew of Bayou cousins, hammers swinging like pendulums, laughter cutting the gloom. "This here's a Phoenix house now," she declared, whitewashing walls the color of fresh cream. "Rise from the ashes, share." Remy joined too, quiet at first, his presence a bridge to Etienne. Over crawfish boils on the lawn, he shared stories. How his love had smuggled them gumbo in moonlit pirogues, how Etienne dreamed of opening a jazz club in the quarter, where folks could love loud without the whip. William listened, tears salting the spicy broth, and vowed silently, "It'll be that. For you." Word spread through Thibodeau like floodwater. The Landry prodigal returned, not to lord, but to heal. Locals trickled in, wary at first. The widow who'd lost her boy to Harlan's zoning scams. The shrimper families squeezed by oil spills hushed up. They brought pies, suspicions, and slowly trust. William hosted town halls in the parlor, once the site of backroom deals, now aired with ceiling fans whirring like confessionals. "No more secrets," he'd say, voice steady. "This house is yours too." James shone in it all, organizing workdays, his shrimper's practicality turning chaos to blueprint. Nights, when the crew dispersed, they'd collapse on the unfinished porch, beers sweating in the heat, stars pricking the indigo dome. "Never thought I'd end up a planter," James teased one evening, lacing fingers with William's. "Daddy'd roll in his grave." William chuckled, leaning into his shoulder. "Ours now, and it's not planting, it's roots. Deep ones. But roots tangle." Harlan's trial loomed in Baton Rouge, a circus of suits and spectacles. William testified first, the courtroom a vault of polished oak and hushed breaths. Facing his uncle across the bar, the man who'd mentored him in fly fishing and filibusters, twisted something primal. "You drowned my brother," William said, voice echoing clear. "For votes. For vanity." Harlan glared, unbowed. "Sacrifice builds empires, boy. Yours'll crumble without it." The jury didn't buy it. Conviction came swift. Manslaughter, conspiracy, racketeering. A cascade that toppled Duval cronies and unearthed more graves, metaphorical and literal. Remy wept in the courthouse hall, clutching a photo of Etienne, finally laid to rest proper in the family plot. Back at Belle Rev, the transformation accelerated. William poured the oil money into renovations. A community kitchen where Bayou folk could learn sustainable shrimping, a library wing stocked with queer histories, Baldwin side by side with Faulkner. The Grand Hall became a venue for open mics, where voices long silenced took the stage. Trans kids from the Atchafalaya, elders sharing Choctaw tales suppressed by plantation lords. James, ever the anchor, proposed they host a face-doo-doo for the reopening. A dance to summon spirits of joy, not sorrow. Invites went out on weathered cards. Bell Rev rises. Come dance on the graves of ghosts. The night arrived humid and electric, lanterns strung like fireflies, Zydeco accordion wheezing life into the sultry air. William, in a crisp linen shirt rolled to elbows, watched from the steps as couples twirled. Straight, gay, in between. Petticoats swirling with pride flags tucked in sashes. Celeste fiddled a reel that had toes tapping involuntary, and Remy spun a girl half his age, grin wide as the river. Then James appeared, extending a calloused hand. Dance with me, Mr. Landry? William took it, pulled into the fray, bodies moving fluid as the Mississippi. The music swelled, a crescendo of washboard and fiddle, and in James's arms, William felt it. Redemption, not as absolution, but as action. Their steps synced, a private rhythm amid the public whirl. And when the set broke, James drew him close, murmuring against his ear. This is what Etienne dreamed. Tears pricked William's eyes, but he blinked them back, kissing James fierce under the oaks. And what we built. Yet, as the fiddles faded and guests drifted homeward, a shadow encroached. A letter, slipped under the door at midnight. Anonymous, scrawled in block letters. Some mud won't wash clean. Daddy's reel will hides more. Dig at your peril. William's gut twisted, the old paranoia rising like swamp gas. He showed it to James at breakfast, sunlight slanting through the new windows. Think it's bluff? Harlan's from a cell. James frowned, butter knife pausing mid-spread on cornbread. Or Daddy's ghost. He confessed plenty, but maybe not all. They searched that afternoon, prying floorboards in the attic, sifting Daddy's desk drawers for hidden compartments. Nothing but moth-eaten ledgers and a locket with Mama's miniature, her smile enigmatic. Frustration mounted, but so did resolve. Whatever it is, William said, dust motes swirling. We face it square. Weeks passed in a rhythm of renewal, morning runs along the levee, where William and James raced the rising sun, breaths puffing white in the rare chill. Afternoons knee-deep in community gardens, planting heirloom tomatoes Etienne had favored. Love deepened in the mundane. James's habit of leaving coffee black on the nightstand, William's thumb tracing the scar on James's knuckle from a net mishap. Then the storm hit, literal and figurative. Hurricane season birthed a Category 3 beast, winds howling like banshees as Bell Rev shuddered against the onslaught. Power flickered out, rain lashing the tin roof like accusations. Huddled in the cellar with lanterns and canned goods, William and James shared blankets, stories warding off the roar. Tell me about before, James said, head on William's chest, thunder rumbling distant. Before the Bayou tried to eat me? William quipped, fingers carding through damp curls. Mama's porch swings, Etienne teaching me to skip stones. Felt safe, till it didn't. James lifted his head, eyes solemn. Safe, that's what I want for us. No more left for dead. The vow hung, sealed with a kiss slow and sure, the world outside raging while they're stilled. But storms pass, revealing wreckage. In the flood's wake, as crews cleared debris, Remy unearthed it from the garden muck. A rusted strongbox, pried open to reveal Daddy's final secret. A second set of ledgers, detailing bribes not just to cover Etienne's death, but to silence a Landry ancestor who'd loved a man in the 1920s, driven to ruin by family decree. And a letter to my sons. The mud buries, but blood remembers. Break the cycle. Love fierce. Pair. William read it aloud by the riverbank, James at his side, tears mingling with the receding waters. He knew, at the end. Fierce? James echoed, pulling him close. The cycle broke, not with a bang, but a quiet snap. Human, flawed, forward. Months unfurled like the river's lazy bends, carrying Bell Rev into a new season. The house stood reborn, a beacon amid the cane fields, whitewashed walls gleaming, gardens bursting with crepe myrtle, and the spicy scent of heirloom roses Mama had planted in Saturdays. William walked its halls no longer haunted, but hallowed, Each creek a story reclaimed, each window framing not isolation, but community. The Face du Dos became legend, monthly magnets drawing crowds from Lafayette to the levees. One crisp fall night, as bonfires crackled and fiddles keened, William took the makeshift stage, a porch platform strung with Edison bulbs. The crowd hushed, faces upturned. Celeste front row, Remy nursing a PBR, locals who'd once spat Landry like a curse. This house, William began, voice carrying clear over the murmurs, was built on backs, enslaved, silenced, sunk. My family, we added our own graves to the tally. Etienne, my brother, paid the price for loving true. But tonight, we dance on those graves not in spite, but in spite of. For the loves we lost, and the ones we claim. Applause thundered, but William's eyes sought James in the throng. The man leaning against a column, grin proud and private. As the band struck up a waltz, slow, aching, James wove through, claiming him for the floor. They moved together, seamless as breath, the world a blur of color and cheer. Later, under the oaks where lightning bugs scripted the dark, they sat with Remy and Celeste, passing a flask of Celeste's peach moonshine. Heard from the feds? Remy asked, voice gruff but eyes soft. William nodded. Harlan's appeal denied. 20+, no parole. Daddy's estate settled. Funds to victims' families. And you too, Celeste prodded, sly. When's the wedding? I ain't gettin' younger. James choked on his sip, coughing as William laughed, genuine and free. Soon. San Francisco, maybe, where it's legal and the fog hides the tears. The plan had simmered over lazy suppers. A courthouse elopement on the coast, then back to Louisiana roots. No extravagance. Just vows exchanged with the Pacific crashing witness. Rings etched with Bayou coordinates. But life, that capricious current, had one more bend. Winter brought a chill snap, frosting the Spanish moss like lace. William woke one morning to James's side cold. Note on the pillow. Gone to the docks. Be back by noon. Love, shrimp breath. A joke, but unease prickled. James had been distant lately. Shadows under his eyes from nightmares of the trial. Whispers from old Duval-kin blaming him for the fall. By midday, no return. William paced the veranda. Phone silent. Gut twisting like he'd swallowed wire. Celeste arrived with gumbo, brow furrowed. Remy saw him at dawn, loading the Miss Duval alone. Said something about tying loose ends. Fear bloomed, cold and familiar. William raced to the harbor, heart in throat, finding the slip empty, nets adrift. Coast Guard radio crackled static. Storm out on the Gulf, rogue waves. Hours stretched eternal, searchlights sweeping the horizon as William stood vigil on the jetty. Wind whipping salt into his eyes. Then a horn, faint, then fierce. The Miss Duval limped in, battered but buoyant. James at the helm, face ashen but alive. He tied off, collapsing into William's arms as the deckhands clapped his back. What the hell? William demanded. Half laugh, half sob, holding tight. James pulled a sodden envelope from his jacket. Daddy's strongbox duplicate, but annotated. Confessions from Old Man Duval, forgiving the past, deeding the shrimping fleet to James free and clear. Had to face it, he gasped. One last run. For us, no debts dragging. William kissed him there, salt and relief. The harbor lights haloing them like saints. No more solos. Promise. Promise. Spring heralded their departure. A small ceremony at City Hall. Celeste officiating with a justice of the peace wink. Remy best man with Etienne's photo pinned to his lapel. Vows were simple. In the mud and the stars, I choose you. Rings slid on, cool and eternal. They honeymooned on the road. Highway 90 west to California. Windows down. Radio crooning Dylan and Dr. John. San Francisco welcomed with fog-kissed hills and rainbow flags snapping proud. But Louisiana called, a homing pigeon in their blood. By summer's end, they returned to Belle Reve, not as heirs, but stewards, expanding the community center into a haven for LGBTQ youth. Workshops on everything from drag storytelling to sustainable Bayou living. Years wove on, threads of joy and quiet ache. William wrote a memoir, Mud and Magnolias, a Southern Reckoning bestseller that funded scholarships in Etienne's name. James captained a co-op fleet, teaching kids to shrimp without stripping the sea. They adopted a stray mutt named Gator, who lounged on the porch like a king, and hosted Thanksgivings where the table groaned under turducken and tails. One evening, as fireflies danced and the river sang its eternal hymn, William found James by the water, skipping stones. Etienne's old trick. Think he knows? James asked, arm around William's waist. That we made it? William nodded, chin on James's shoulder. He's dancing somewhere, loud. And in the bayou's embrace, no longer grave but cradle, they stood, two men forged in flood and fire, loving fierce against the current. The mud had buried secrets, but from its depths, life bloomed. Human, hopeful, unbroken. The end came gentle, a decade on. William, gray at the temples, watching James mend nets on the dock, heart full to bursting. No betrayal left, only belonging. In America's South, where sins ran deep as roots, they carved grace from the grit. A legacy not of silence, but song.